The purpose of the autofill kit is to automatically fill these barrels with product so that as the product is being drawn down, you don't have to worry about manually filling it back up. It will automatically fill from a bag-in-the-box solution and fill the compartment back up with both product and water at the right ratio, alleviating the need for you to have to worry about doing that on your own. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be removing these top covers so that we can make the proper cuts that are needed to accept the autofill pieces. Then we're going to come around to the back and remove some black covers that allow us to replace those with our backpacks, which we'll go into further detail about that later. And then we have a power module that we will mount to the back panel. The backpacks will plug into the power module into your power outlet, and then from there we connect water and syrup, and we're pretty much good to go after that. Okay, so let's remove the top cover. We're going to remove this one off the machine over on this side here. And as we do that, it just simply lifts straight up. And then you've got this wired connection here that you're going to simply unplug. And now you're free to take the lid and move it over your cutting table where you can make your marks and also make your cuts. Okay, so for the top lid, we want to make all of our modifications at the back end of the cover, and that is indicated by the wire here because that's always on the back end of the unit. And so the first cut we're going to make is going to be to the underside because we're looking at the bottom of this cover. And there's a little imprinted dot here on the plastic that's kind of your center point. And what you want to do is come in 1 9/16 of an inch from that point. And then from the center of that, you're going to come over 2 inches, or you're going to center on that and make your wide cut 2 inches. So you can remove this and do that, or you can make that cut while this is still attached. But the next cut we're going to make is going to be to this graphic panel here on the back as well, and it's going to be at the, if we were to turn this upside down like it were sitting on the unit, it's going to be at the bottom. So once we flip this around, it's now going to be on the top. So to get to that graphic, you got to take these 2 screws out of the top, which is fairly simple. There is some lighting inside of here, but none of that lighting is wired to this plastic piece that we're removing. This simply lifts out like that. You can set that aside. And then now you can move this wire out of the way, and you can take or remove this graphic piece, which you might have to loosen a little bit because it can kind of get stuck in place. And then once you have that, now you can lay this down, and where you've got the little V cut here, that's where you're going to be making your cut there. And we'll talk about the dimensions for that once we get to that point. Okay, so we've marked our points here, and what I've done is from the back lip here, I've come in 1 inch, and that's going to be our bottom line, and then I've also come in 1 inch and 9/16, and that's going to be our top line here, and then we are 2 inches wide. So I'm just going to kind of crudely draw or connect these dots. It doesn't have to be perfect. When you're doing this, no one's ever going to see this once it's done and installed. So now we've got a rectangle, and that's going to indicate what we're going to cut out. I don't know if you can see these 2 holes here. This was a prototype cover, so our first attempt was to drill a couple holes. But that's why those are seen. You would not see this on your unit. So anyway, now you can use either an X-Acto knife or a Dremel tool with a cutting blade on it to cut this rectangular shape out, and we'll pick it up from there. Okay, so after just a few minutes, here we are. We've got our cut made into the bottom of our plastic cover here, And now we can move on to the graphic piece. Okay, so we've marked out our dots here for our cutout on our graphic. The width of this cutout is going to be 1 13/16, and the height is going to be 2 inches. So we'll just go ahead and connect these dots. Again, doesn't have to be anything super fancy. And now that we've got that done, we can just use a pair of scissors to cut that out. Okay, now we've got our cutout made in our graphic. It's easily made with a pair of scissors, as you can see. And now we are going to fit that back into our cover. Okay, now that we've modified our top cover, we're going to move on to the rest of the install. So this is just a quick look at what you're going to get as far as your contents. And again, some of this stuff will duplicate if you've got more than one barrel on your slush machine. So, and specifically this part right here. This is what's known as the backpack. It's got all the internals inside that are being used to push the product to your slush machine. Along with that, you're going to get a couple of longer screws to fasten this backpack in place of where the initial cover plate was removed. You'll get your power pack here, and that is attached to the back panel with these little black rivets. And then you've got your power supply. Okay, so I've taken both the lids off these hoppers just to give myself a little more space, but in reality, that's probably what you would be doing anyway if you were working on a 2-barrel unit. But I'm only really going to modify this side so that when we're done, you can see the difference between the two. So what we're going to do is first remove this black cover panel here, and there's just 2 screws, Phillips head screws, that are holding that in place. So we'll remove those. And when you're done with these screws, you can just set them off to the side because we're going to replace them with longer ones. And then now this just comes right off, real easy. You can set that to the side. And now we're going to take our backpack and we're going to install that onto the unit where we just removed that cover panel from. Now, if it makes it any easier, this is the indicator that tells the machine when to fill. If you want to remove that, it just plugs in and out. While you do this, to make it a little easier for you, you can. What's important here is if you look at this adjustment screw right here, this is what allows you to adjust the viscosity. And there's a little plastic piece here that has a little nub that sticks off of it. And you want to make sure that that gets aligned inside of this window here so that as you're adjusting it in the field or the customer's adjusting that viscosity, they can see that pin moving up and down inside of this window. So we're going to put this in place. And everything looks good there. So now we're going to take our longer Phillips head screws and put those in. Tighten them down. And you can use a drill for this if you want to speed up the process. Just make sure that you adjust that torque down so that you don't crack any of the plastic as and you don't over tighten it. Okay, so we got that nice and snug. And we can now take our probe here, plug it back into the backpack, and that is going to slide right into the sidewall here of the hopper. There's a little notch here at the top of this barrel that you will see. It's the last notch toward the back, and it just fits right into that notch. And now we can get to work on installing the power pack. Okay, so now we're going to put our power pack onto the unit, and this is really kind of at your own preference as far as where you want it positioned in terms of height or, you know, what have you on the unit. We have holes that are pre-drilled into this back panel, and those align with the 4 holes that are on this power pack. So you've got 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, and once you align it to where you'd like to have it, then you just simply take one of these black plastic rivets and you shove it into the hole until you hear it click. And that keeps it in place. So the thing that you want to pay attention to is making sure that the connections are all facing down. So you don't want them facing up because you don't want any product getting into them. So you want to have them facing down. So you line this up to where you think you'd like it. Find the hole, shove in your plastic rivet, push on it, and it should, there we go into place. And then you're just going to have 3 more that you got to put into place. Once you get the first 2 in, the rest are a little easier. And our last one right here. There we go. And she's installed. And now we just have to make our connections. Okay, so now we're going to connect our backpack to our power pack. And so all you got to do is take this connector right here. You're going to come into the bottom of the pack and you're going to go right into the one that is closest to that backpack. And it just goes in like that. Now, if we had one over here, we would be plugging that one in as well. If you're working on a single barrel unit, this backpack will come with either 2 or 3 connections. If you have 2 connections on it and you're connecting it to a single barrel unit, you will have a jumper or a dummy plug to put in there so that this will function the way it's supposed to. Without it, it will not run the single unit until it recognizes that both are plugged in. So once we get that done, then you're going to plug in your power, and that gets plugged in right here. And then you plug in your power cord to your transformer, and then that gets plugged into our outlet once we are fully connected and ready to go. Okay, so now we're going to insert our spouts into the top lid. So I just had this sitting over here resting while we set up. And you just simply stick these in through your cutout, and you want to, as you do that, you can see the cord for the lights is right here. So you want to kind of push those to the side or that cord to the side as you're pushing the tubes through. And once you've confirmed you've got them through the cutout inside, you can kind of lay this down a little bit, and then there's a plastic lip that you want to get this over. There we go. And it takes a little finagling, but once you get it over that lip, there we go. Then the rest is cake. So there we go. We'll then push this into the graphic cutout. Okay, so you just want to make sure you've got both tubes coming through that cutout, because it is easy for them to get a mind of their own and have one stick through and one kind of sticking this way into the cover, which you don't want, because then you're going to end up with a big old mess. And then once you got all that done, you can take your light connection here for this top cover and plug that back in. And now we just have to make our water and our syrup connections. Okay, so now we're going to make our connections to our syrup and water lines on the backpack unit here. So your syrup line is always going to be the one with the quarter turn ball valve on it, and your water line has no valve on it whatsoever. You're just connecting a water line straight to it. Now we drive the syrup to the unit using a syrup pump, and that syrup pump can be either CO2 driven or electric. In our case, we're using a CO2 driven pump. That doesn't really matter in terms of showing you how to hook it up, but I'm just letting you know that information. So on that pump, you're going to have what's called a suction line, which is typically a clear plastic tubing that looks kind of like this. You'll have a bag connector on the end of it. This one is just open. And I recommend, if you can, a generic bag connector, and those are typically gray in color. They have two connection points on them. One where you would put this in, and then the other side typically just has a plug in it, but that'll come in handy later. The other bag connector is a Coca-Cola bag connector. It's their specific connector that they use for their brand products. And the only reason I recommend generic over Coca-Cola is because the generic has that extra port on it that you can have a cap on and then use it later when it comes to flushing the unit out. So once that syrup is brought through that suction line, that clear suction line, then the other line is going to, it won't necessarily be red, but you'll take your other line and you'll make your connection here to this ball valve. And you'll just simply, first of all, you'll have a connector or a clamp on there of some sort, whether it's an Oetiker clamp that is essentially non-removable, or a hose clamp. And you'll stick this on, clamp it down, and you're good to go. And then your water line, the tubing looks very much the same. Just, in fact, it might look identical. In this case, mine is the same type of tubing. It's just white in color. And you make your water connection here. Now, after you've made those connections, we can power everything on, and you'll see that the product will start to dispense into the hopper. You'll want to brix the product, and the way you brix it is through your water. So on the left side of this backpack here, you've got this white plastic piece, and inside of there is a flathead adjustment screw that you can use to either lessen the amount of water in by turning it clockwise, or turn it counterclockwise and allow more water flow through there. And so that's how you're brixing the product. In other words, your ratio of syrup to water. And that does it. You're now fully connected. You just open this ball valve, and in this case it's already on. Turn everything on, and you're good to go. Okay, so to give you a brief explanation of how you could flush this autofill kit, obviously the water side you wouldn't have to do anything to. It's just plain water going through there, and there's no need to really flush that out. But if for some reason you were to change your bag in the box and you have a different flavor now being pumped into that barrel, or about to be pumped into that barrel, and you want to flush that old product out of the lines and out of the syrup pump, the way you do that is this. First of all, you can shut this valve off while you go through the disconnect and reconnect process. And then you're going to go to your bag in the box, and that's where you've got the suction line that I mentioned earlier. And the suction line will have a bag in box connector on it. You'll disconnect that bag from the suction line using the bag and box connector. And then once you have that disconnected, and this is where the generic bag connector comes in handy, because like I said, you have two connection points on that connector. One that's already plugged into this line, and then another one that has a cap on it. And so you remove that cap, and then you would need some more of this line that you can attach to that cap. And then what you do is you take the line and you get yourself a bucket of warm water with some, there's some mix that you can buy, a chemical that you can buy out there on the market. It wouldn't come from Icetro, but it's, if you're familiar at all with cleaning slush machines, you would know where to get it. But if you want to just do warm water, you could do warm water as well. You don't want it to be hot, but just warm water. And you stick your suction line into that bucket of warm water, open your ball valve again, and now the unit is going to pull from this bucket of warm water instead of your syrup, and it's just going to bring that up and push it out into your bowl. And then once you get to a point where you see nothing, you know, these lines are, specifically the syrup line, go clear, you know you've flushed all of the old product out of that system. So now you can go back, you can turn this ball valve back off, pull this suction line out of your warm bucket of water, and now you just take your back connector that's already attached, attach it to your new syrup box, and you're good to go. Open this ball valve back up so that the syrup can go through, and you're good to go. Now, of course, you're going to want to empty whatever is in this barrel, this hopper here, just like you would, you know, to fill a cup. But you'd want to empty up whatever you flushed out of there, and then maybe fill it with some warm water and empty it again just to make sure you get any residue out of there. And that'll do it. Okay, so that does it. I hope that that was some useful information for you. Again, my name is Jason Myers, National Service Manager for Icetro America. And if you have any further questions on how to connect these units or how to clean these units, please don't hesitate to give us a call or reach out to us.